this episode of the podcast, I talk with writer, producer, and director Bret Nelson. Bret has recently wrote the novelization of the Killer Astron 6 film Manborg for Encyclopocalypse Publications. He has also worked with the sci-fi series Farscape and the Jim Henson Company. After you are done with this episode, make sure you check out my fellow horsemen of the podcast Apocalypse, Everything Went Black podcast, Into the Necrosphere podcast, the Necromaniacs podcast, and the Soul Knox podcast. Thanks so much and hope you enjoy. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is cool, man. I'm glad Encyclopocalypse reached out to me. It's a hard one to say.
Rolls right out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a rough one. I've had a few guests from Encyclopocalypse before on here, and then getting that out is a bit of a pain, but it's,
I am certain whatever night they came up with it, and however many other names are on the big whiteboard, it made a lot of sense.
It's cool. It's a great name too. It's just, man, you got to really stop and think about it before you let it out. you know. And
it's like 3/4 of your Twitter post is just putting the name of the publisher in it.
Yeah, most definitely. So, Bret, how did you get hooked up with Encyclopocalypse?
Boy, it was a while back. I wrote a couple of short stories, and was sharing them with a friend. And he asked me if I had found a home for them yet. And I said, they're not finished yet. Of course, I haven't found a home for them yet. I haven't even submitted these to anybody. And that was David Bergantino, who's a really, really, really fine writer of everything. And he had a couple of reprints that had gone to Encyclopocalypse. It was from his Bard's Blood series. I don't know how familiar you are with that. It was a while back. He took, it was kind of before its time, he took Shakespeare plays and converted them to high school dramas. So think name a Shakespeare play and then turn that into Riverdale.
Interesting.
So he did one with Hamlet, and he did one with Midsummer Night's Dream, and they were picked up, and then Encyclopocalypse had just put those out. And he said, this sounds like it's right for that banner. And although I didn't know Mark Miller, who was the guy who runs Encyclopocalypse, he said, you should, they've got good things going over there, and you should see just out of the, cold, see what they say. And he liked it. And he was just going to put up, I think he was going to, this is a while back, I'm sorry, you can edit my stammers if you wish.
No problems.
Make me sound a little more coherent. He was going to put the story up, which was just barely novella length. And I poked around a little bit, and I didn't want the shortest thing there. So I wrote 2 more stories to back it up. So it's a micro collection instead. And it's called Lumber and Other Tales, and they put that up. And I was very happy with the process, and there were good people, and they even did an audiobook version. Jake Ruddle read it, and it sounded great. And so I started working up my next thing for them. And I got a call out of the blue for the next thing, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but the short answer is that's how I found Encyclopocalypse. Another author who was working with them read something of mine and said, you should hand this over.
That's cool. And then I see you did the novelization of Manborg, which I love the film. I haven't got to read the novelization yet, but I think that's really cool. You got to write that.
Yeah, that just came out last month, and it's a whoosh. It was my goal with that one that it was not slow. I wanted people to get to the last page and go, whoa, that was quick. And that was the one, again, Mark Miller, the guy who runs Encyclopocalypse. The larger work that I'm doing for them next involves a fictitious Poverty Row studio making drive-in movies in the 70s.
Oh, nice.
And Mark and I were talking about the things that were going into that, and he said, "Speaking of working on low budgets, have you ever seen Manborg?"
Hmm.
And I said, "No." And he started naming other Astron 6 titles, and of course I'd seen Psycho Gorman and I'd seen The Void.
Hmm.
And he said, "Same guys earlier, you need to watch Manborg." And I said, "Okay, I've got homework." So I went and I watched Manborg and I loved it. And he said, "This is going to sound weird, but I've had the novelization rights to Manborg for a really long time because I've been wanting to write the novelization." Mark did.
Hmm.
But he can never find time because he's busy, running a publishing company.
Right.
So he said, "Do you think you could write the novelization for Manborg? Because I think your voice may be right for it." So I said, "Sure," with that
Hmm.
much confidence. Uh, Over a weekend, I wrote the first, couple of chapters and handed it off to him and to Steve Kostansky just to make sure that the voice was right. And then again, this is how nice the process is there. After those first couple of chapters, when I heard that the voice was right, the next thing I handed in was the completed draft.
Mm.
So it was just, "Sounds good, go."
Right.
And I just went until it was done, handed off the whole thing, and I got back 4 notes.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing then. For only 4 notes, so.
Yeah, I had more notes on that draft than the publisher did. So there's that one. And they also put it out. I don't know if you see, they in all of their novelizations they put out in a mass market paperback size,
Hmm.
like you used to get on the spinners at the bookstores. That makes my heart smile because I'm old. So anytime I see something like that, it's like, oh, they care.
Yeah, I love how they do that. My first interaction with Encyclopocalypse was the Wishmaster novelization. They hit
Okay.
me up for like a review on it. This was maybe last year, I think it was, or maybe the year before last. But yeah, they hit me up for a review on that and stuff. And I got sent one of the paperbacks. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And this takes me back a little bit. It's great. I still love physical media, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I think physical media is still king, but I'm also a big fan of the whole audiobook stuff too. So I think that's really cool. Is Manborg an audiobook now as well, or?
I'm not sure where it's at. I know they're making one, and they were in the middle of casting the last time I talked to them.
Oh, that's
I'm
really
going to see
cool.
them again today, and I need to ask. So it's definitely in the plan,
Nice.
but they haven't announced who's reading it yet.
Yeah,
But
that's gonna be a good one for
I,
sure.
I hope so. I try to write stuff that's meant to be read out loud.
Yeah, especially with Manborg too. Like it's such a like high octane, you know, craziness going on.
Yeah.
Just like all their stuff. So that'd be a really good one for me to listen to when I'm at work.
Have to explain to people why you're giggling.
So how'd you get your start into writing? Like how'd you get started with all that? What's your origin story on that?
Well, it's a 30-year saga.
Hmm.
I've always been I mean, my very first jobs when I was a wee tot, I was a copywriter. I was writing a lot of junk mail in the 80s. I was also writing a lot of comedy, and I was also waiting a lot of tables. So not to pump up what the career was. Um, I got a job in the I'd say early to mid 90s, late 80s. I was doing a lot of video games on the side, mostly advertising, but I was a huge fan of video games, and I started sort of peeking into that world. Um, some people that I worked with ended up getting hired at Disney in their interactive division.
Mhm.
and I got in there too. Now, anybody who is a producer on a video game is a writer on a video game.
Mm.
At least that was the way back then. Now they tend to hire outside writers to do their dialogue depending on the game because it is a lot more like movie production.
Mhm.
But back in the days of, Toy Story for SNES, yes, I'm that old. Back in those days, the producers did all of the writing. Plus, I was, doing spec scripts and short stories and stuff like that, but mostly it was the game production. Eventually, the Disney company and I came to an agreement where they didn't want me to work there anymore, so I didn't. And I ended up going to the Jim Henson Company. And I've been working with Henson's off and on for ever since, like 30 years now, off and on with Henson's. And with them, it got less and less video game and more children's television production and some movies here and there, but mostly kid TV with them.
Mm-hmm.
Producing, directing, and again, if it's a good show, if you're the producer or the director, you're in the script all the time. Mm-hmm. All the time. So it never really stopped writing. When things started to slow down, beginning of the pandemic, maybe even a little bit before, I had some downtime, and it had been a long time since I wrote prose, really long time. Mm-hmm. And I thought I should draw that knife across the stone a couple of times and make sure that thing's still sharp. And I remembered Ray Bradbury wrote a book on writing a long time ago. And it's called Zen and the Art of Writing, if I remember the title correctly. And he said, if you want to get back in the saddle on the writing, you should write a short story every week. Because you should be able to do a flash story in a couple of days, 1,000 words. And
right.
a short story you should be able to do in a week. And in about 3 months, you'll have a dozen or so stories. And one of them is probably going to be pretty good. And if it isn't, you should reconsider either your approach or what it is you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I thought I'll at least do that. I'll just start, cranking some stories out and make sure that I can still come up with an idea and give it a beginning and a middle and an end. And the first 2 got picked up by magazines. And then I went the longer format, and it got through to Encyclopocalypse. So I guess the 20-year incubator of video games, children's television, and movies, just all these different methodologies of storytelling, mm-hmm. I think it sharpened up the prose a little bit from when I was doing it before.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense as a linear path. I was just sort of rambling there, but
no, it's cool. I like to hear the whole backstory like that. I think that's really, really awesome.
So since then, I mean, I've been, at it like crazy. I still write on a manual typewriter because that's how I learned to write. I don't edit on a manual typewriter. I stop every 10 pages or so, and it goes into a scanner. And that becomes a Word document, and that's what I edit. But as far as just blasting the story out of my brain and onto a page, I haven't found a better tool because it's noisy and it's visceral, and there's zero distractions. You can't even correct a word. You just got to skip down 2 lines and start over again.
Right.
Just keep going. It's a downhill ski. You can't just stop and go back up. You got to get all the way down.
I remember writing on a typewriter in my younger days and stuff. And you just keep on rolling.
Yeah. And I am so scattered. I can't. I try to, and again, that's just for the initial brain blast. That's just for the spark of it. I edit on the computer, but if I do the first chunk on the computer, it never gets done. It never gets done. Microsoft Word shows me a misspelling, and it's got a little squiggly red line under it. When you click on that red line, it not only shows you the correct word, it shows you maybe a couple of other words
Mm-hmm.
that might be better. Huh. And maybe this whole sentence could be reworked. And I'm not happy with this formatting in this paragraph either. Wow, it feels like I'm procrastinating. I'm going to look up procrastination and see if there's any way I can get out of this. Oh, look, there's a whole subreddit on procrastination, and now it's nighttime.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like it takes you down that rabbit hole and you never get out.
Yeah. So I would rather go down the typewriter rabbit hole where when I get to the end of the hole, at least I've got a story done.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Going back to your working with the Henson stuff, you worked on Farscape, correct?
A tiny little credit on Farscape, but I love the show so much that I make sure to put that credit in everything that I do.
It's a great show.
I loved it. Yeah. No, that was a great time. We had on the kids' side, we had Bear in the Big Blue House over on Disney Channel. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, but that was a great show. Muppets had a movie in the theater. Farscape was recreating sci-fi TV. It was a golden time.
Yeah,
Golden.
I dig Farscape, and it comes on reruns on the Comet Network, so it's pretty cool. If you have Comet, it's like a free channel that's actually on antennas if you have those, you know.
I
So
remember
it's cool.
those. Yeah, it's on. It's free on Amazon right now too. The whole series HD is on Amazon Prime right now.
Nice.
If you want to stream it there. And I think it still holds up. I haven't watched the whole run in a long time. It's probably been 3 years since I went through the whole thing. I'm in the middle of going through Galactica again right now, and that's a hard sit. That's a heartbreaking sit.
Yeah, that's an epic one.
Yeah, and you know who's gonna die. You know, you see somebody on the screen, you're like, oh, you're not gonna make it through this season.
Right. What was your job on Farscape?
I was working with the creature shop at that time. So we did a whole bunch of different things, but on that one, I was just on Peacekeeper Wars. I wasn't on the series. I was on the SciFi gave up on the show
Hmm.
and broke everybody's hearts. So Brian Henson found some money and some interest, and they came back with I think it was a 2-part TV movie
Okay.
to sort of tie up the loose ends on the plot because they thought they were going to get another season and they didn't. So they ended on a cliffhanger.
Hmm.
And then they got canceled. So it was they got the band back together to do this 4-hour movie to tie it all up. And of course they still left it on a cliffhanger because they wanted it to get picked up again.
Right.
But I don't know how familiar you are with the characters. There's character Rigel, the Hynerian, who is all puppet all the time. The problem they were having, and this was like the one little tiny sequence and problem that I solved, is a lot of TV is a lot of hours that result in 30 seconds on the screen, which is what makes it expensive, especially in a creature show. Up to that time, Rigel was the only Hynerian we had seen. And there's a couple of scenes in there where the war's gone crazy back home, and he's got to talk to his cousin. And there'd never been another Hynerian. So there was this whole design process that I was a chunk of about, well, what do they look like? And I'm the simple guy. I'm like, they look like Rigel. It's his cousin. Let's get on. But there's these discussions like, well, are they like, look at dogs. You got a Chihuahua, you got a Mastiff, and you got a Pug. Those are all dogs. Are Hynerians like that? Are they all different shapes and sizes, or are they all, kind of like ducks? Maybe they're not so spread across the whole species. Maybe, ducks kind of look alike. They're just different colors. And so you have all these goofy conversations and go through 1,000 drawings and 1,000 drawings, and you end up with the character. And then we had to figure out how we're going to actually perform it. Are we going to make a whole of the puppet? So it was mainly just that. It was mainly getting all of that dealt with.
That's cool, though. I bet it was a really interesting experience just being on the set, especially dealing with like Brian Henson and stuff like that. Or
he was standing right next to me, but fortunately, I'd worked with my home base was the Henson lot in Hollywood, which is where he is.
Mm-hmm. So
I'd already done a ton of stuff with Brian, so that that part was just another day. Yeah, because we'd already done a bunch of kid shows.
Did you get to meet Jim at any point in time, or was that
He had,
before?
yeah, he had passed before, about 2 years before I came to the company.
Yeah, the Hensons have done so much killer stuff, man. Like, it's still, I think that's an honor just to work side by side, with the Hensons. So,
And they're still making really good. I mean, did you see Fraggle Rock just came back? It's on Apple TV.
oh, it did? I
And,
had no idea about Fraggle Rock. I know, what's
and
the,
it looks great. It looks
does it?
fantastic. And they brought back Dark Crystal a few years ago on Netflix.
Yes, that's
And
what I was thinking of. Dark Crystal looked really cool. I
and
watched that on
yeah,
Netflix.
it's amazing. And even the stuff that isn't legacy properties. I work with them on a show called Word Party, which if you have tiny children, I'm sorry. But just the same, Word Party is a really good show. And we've done 6 seasons of that on Netflix. Pajaminals is another great kids show. This is a show. Do you have children, Brandon?
I do not. Well, me and my wife have two cats, so they're kind of like
Okay.
kids.
Uh, Pajaminals is a show that is designed to get your children to go to bed.
It seems like one my mom would put on when I was a kid, something like that,
Yeah, the show is intentionally set up to where you see them going through their process, and their little problem is always a bedtime problem, and by the time they solve it, they're all snuggled in, and then they sing a song and they're asleep. And hopefully so is the kid. Just it's great show. So yeah, Bird Party's great. They just did Harriet the Spy is over there on Apple. That's a new program.
Mhm.
They are producers on the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio movie.
Oh, cool.
That's coming out, I think, next year. Trailer's up
Mhm.
now, and it looks amazing.
It does.
Uh, so yeah, it just keeps they keep going on because I think given Jim's spirit and the stuff that was out when I was younger, it kind of changed the way you thought. So they attract people who say, I want to make stuff like that. And I think that's why the circle keeps going. Because they don't attract Henson's doesn't attract people that want to make the Fast and the Furious.
Right.
Because that's not who they are. They attract people who want to make creature shows and really thick, rich world building things, or really, really high quality kid TV.
Yeah, I'm glad to know they're still up and running like that, which I already knew they were doing, like, Dark Crystal and everything, but I didn't know the connection between Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio movie and stuff. So that's really cool. That's a great combination.
Yeah, their studio in Hollywood, even it's the day it opened, Brian did a speech and he compared it to the Muppet movie, but they had been looking for a proper home since they left the Disney lot in the 80s. And in 2000, they finally found it. Charlie Chaplin built the studio in 1917.
Wow.
And it's on La Brea Boulevard, and it looks like these, old school cottages on the outside. They're all facades.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you go inside, it's cobblestones and clapboard buildings, and the old sound stages are still there. It was A&M Records for ages. Now it's Henson Recording, but the recording studio is still there. The sound stages are there, and it's a wonder. It is an oasis in a sea of t-shirt shops and things that are Hollywood. Mm-hmm. You hit this place and it's magic once you walk inside. It's even the studio space is cool when you walk in.
That's cool. So it's some almost like the Willy Wonka of effects and stuff like that,
Got good bones when you walk in. And well, Brian's point was, the Muppet movie was about these people that were running around in circles with talent and time, and they wanted to find a home in Hollywood. And he said, we finally in the year 2000, we got it all put together.
That's good. It's like a lost story because everything nowadays is mostly big budget CGI and stuff. And CGI done right is okay, here and there where it's, but when it comes to doing creature effects, I've always preferred like puppetry or just, somebody in a costume. I don't like CGI.
There's still a lot of people doing the creature effects right. And people do CGI right. The only trouble is I don't know if it matters how good the CG looks because time is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the best of the best of the best, the most realistic right now today, August 6th, 2022, is it going to hold up in 10 years?
Right.
Or will there be something? There's no way to know. There's really no way to know. But if you look at something like the Jabba the Hutt puppet in Jedi, that was a great puppet. He looked fantastic. They painted him well and they lit him well. Well, that's always going to look good.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to look good because it looked good when you pointed the camera at it and you framed it well and you lit it well. You're never going to have to mess with that. It looked great on the day, and it's always going to look great. So that's the advantage. The disadvantages, of course, is the options. I mean, I do some CG work with Henson's.
Mm-hmm.
The children's program that I do a lot of. We've done 2 of them recently. Splash and Bubbles is about the ocean, and Word Party is about words. But they're puppeteered. They're CG animation, but they're puppeteered.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, I don't know how familiar you are with effects work, but they use a Stick and Waldo hand rig, very, very similar to the stuff that they drove animatronics on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or the Dinosaurs TV series. Mm-hmm. If you've ever seen the behind the scenes on that, you've got a puppeteer with a set of hand controls that are moving all the servos in the animatronic head. Right. We applied the same tech to move around texture map deformities, spines and muscles and bones in the CG head. So even though it's CG, it's being performed in the moment by a puppeteer who's also providing the voice. At the same time, I've got people out on a mocap stage in the ping pong ball suits, and they're providing the bodies. So that's exactly the way they did Ninja Turtles.
I remember seeing behind the scenes of Ninja Turtles and stuff, and I've seen a little bit of what you're talking about there.
Yeah, it's a suit performer inside the suit, and they've got a large animatronic head on their shoulders. That's hooked up with an umbilical to a puppeteering control system, and there's a puppeteer working the face while he's providing the voice. 2 puppeteers working in concert to deliver a character, which is what Henson's has been doing for years. So the CG shows that you see us doing, even though it's CG, it's all done in real time.
That's cool.
Yeah, when I'm directing an episode of Word Party, I've got 4 characters. It's a wallaby and an elephant and a panda and a cheetah. And really cute. But they're performed right there. If you were in the van, if you were just in the van looking at the monitors like we were at a football game, and you were in the director's van, you would be looking at the monitors and it would be carrying the cartoon, but you would be listening to me talk back and forth with the cartoon characters and telling them where to stand and how to block the scenes and telling where the cameras to go. And then I would yell action and cut and we would grab scenes.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that's more, I guess, more hands-on tactical like feel to it, instead of what I'm thinking is more like, this make something up on the computer and run with that.
Yeah, we take all the math out. Take all the math out. Anything that moves in these shows is moved because somebody moved it, whether it's a camera or an eyebrow. It happened because somebody moved it. And I think it looks better because they're kind of clumsy and we make mistakes and we make surprises along the way. It's not like we came up with a storyboard and a script and shipped it off to a throughput company somewhere who just put it together exactly like it was written and then handed it back. That's no fun.
I want to touch a little bit back on the writing stuff.
Yes, please.
Who's some of your favorite authors?
Oh boy, so many.
There's a few, I know it's probably a bunch.
Well, let me think. It's always what I'm reading right now. So Robert E. Howard's who I'm reading right now.
Oh, I'm doing an audiobook with Robert E. Howard right now. I'm going through all the Conan stuff. So
Excellent. Yeah, I'm rereading top to bottom every bit of Solomon Kane. It's for
nice.
another project I got coming up. But yeah, there is he needs more love these days. Howard.
Agreed.
It is some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? His prose is really tidy. There
Mhm.
are there are no wasted words in there. It is just so lean. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You will get through a 4-page fight scene where a ton of stuff happened, and you know exactly what happened because the prose is just so bang on. So yeah, I'm reading that. What else? I'm reading some nonfiction with John Kaspard. If you're looking into movie production, he's a guy you should know. John Gaspard wrote Fast, Cheap, and Under Control. It's a series of books
Mhm.
about making low budget movies. Well, he doesn't look for the fumbly bad films. He looks for films like Dementia 13 and El Mariachi, where they were on a low budget. The movie turned out great.
Right.
And he interviews everybody from the writers beforehand all the way through to say, how exactly did you do that?
Mm.
And what lessons can we take away from that to help us along? So yeah, I got that. Who else am I reading right now? That's it. I got a nonfiction, Solomon Kane. Well, in the broader sense, excuse me, Harlan Ellison was a huge influence on me, giant influence on me. I don't think a month that goes by that I don't reread one of his stories. Who else did I read recently? I just finished. I'm not in the room where my books are.
Yeah.
So that's the real problem. Do I need to open up my Amazon account and see what it doesn't make any sense? I'll just leave you with those because those are really good gets.
Those are good. Yeah. Like I said, the Robert E. Howard stuff's really cool. A friend of mine who runs a podcast called Everything Went Black, Mike Hill, they're doing some deep dives and stuff here and there on like Robert E. Howard, H.P. Lovecraft, like the whole connection with those two and stuff. It's really fascinating.
Does he have the letters collections?
I'm not sure what he has. He has a bunch of stuff, so
Yeah.
he
They
probably does.
Yeah, Perilous Worlds or Cabinet Licensing. It's the same company, but they're the ones who own everything Robert E. Howard.
Hmm.
Howard, this was back in the day when you collected all of your correspondence.
Right.
You never threw it away. So they have the collected letters between Howard and Lovecraft.
Mm.
You can see them like sharing a manuscript and their notes back and forth and talking politics and stuff like that. They've got a couple of volumes of it, and they're interesting. They're interesting to read. After a little bit, it feels like you're eavesdropping. You feel kind of weird about it.
Yeah, and definitely that is kind of like eavesdropping, but
They're the ones who kept it. You shouldn't
right.
archive. Didn't want it read later after you were dead. You should have burned it.
Yeah, I grew
I'm
up.
also rereading. Here's another one, and it's old. 2000 AD comics. I just
Okay.
got a bunch of collections of Nemesis the Warlock,
Oh, cool.
which I missed out on. I was all about Judge Dredd, but I didn't read Nemesis. So these came to me, and it's new to me. It's new to me and wonderful.
Yeah, I love the old Judge Dredd comics. I read those now. I got a Fire tablet, which makes comic reading a little bit easier because I have horrible lighting in my house. But I read them on Comixology, and I don't know if Judge Dredd's still up there, but they did have like the whole like omnibus of all like the Judge Dredd stuff there for a while, and it's so good. It just takes me back to the 90s.
Yeah, and there's something like 30 volumes in those omnibuses.
I think they did a werewolf Judge Dredd, if I'm not mistaken. I thought that was really cool.
I can't imagine they would have missed out on anything. They they sent him to Titan. They sent him into the desert to die. They sent him to the moon.
Yeah, they put him through the ringer.
I loved it when they sent him to the moon. He was looking for some guys who were robbing people, and
Hmm.
he didn't find the crooks. And like 6 weeks later, after they never find the crooks, there's a report from an apartment building, and they go in, and there's all the guys dead and all the stolen stuff. And they start looking through, and because they were crooks and losers, they didn't pay their bills,
Hmm.
including the bill to the oxygen board, which is a really important one if you live on the moon.
Right.
So instead of getting their power cut off, they got their air cut off, and that's what got them in the end.
Wow. Are you a fan of the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I am a fan of the Stallone Judge Dredd. I am not a fan of the Rob Schneider character in the Stallone Judge Dredd. If,
Yeah, it was kind
if
of like, why even there?
Has it been a while since you watched it, or have you seen it recently?
I try to watch at least once a year, man, because I like to take my trips back into the '90s every so often. So that's usually one of my top ones to watch every year. So
If you start with, just if you're into the comics and the world, they
hmm.
start with a block war, which is right out of a lot of the books. Uh, the Angel family's in there, and they look great. Mean Machine's in there, and he looks great.
Hmm.
Um, some of the uh, uh, hierarchy, judge politics are in there, which are kind of core. They tried to get the psychic core in there, but nah, not so much.
Hmm.
But he took his helmet off. That was I understand Sylvester Stallone's in your movie and you paid a lot of money for him and you're not going to leave the helmet on. But that was a bad point. And then the comedy relief
Yeah.
were the two bad parts. But there's a lot of good in there. The law cycle looks great. The the lawgiver, the guns look great, the costumes look right, the stances, the fight scenes. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And like I said, I was just so happy to see the Angel Gang in there, and Mean Machine looked fantastic. He still looks fantastic.
Yeah, it still holds up really well. All the special effects in Judge Dredd hold up really well today. I
Yeah,
like it. It still looks good.
I think it was Stan Winston and Digital Domain doing those, if I remember right. And the new one was really good. New, it was like 10, 15 years ago, but the one with Carl Urban was
Hmm.
really.
No, that one was really killer, and people have been waiting on like a sequel for years now. And there was like rumors that there was gonna be another Dredd movie, but I've heard nothing since then. That was like 5 years ago with those rumors. So
Yeah, I don't know that the first one made a ton of money, and
no,
that's
I
it.
don't think so. And it
That
came out as a 3D movie too, which 3D kind of died out. So that was kind of like a fad, and I think people was like, oh, this is another 3D movie. It's gonna be crappy, but
there's some money they could have saved. That money could have
right.
been profit. Yeah, it's a weird time, I think, right now on the movie side. Well, it's weird everywhere, but
Hmm.
I'm working on some stuff on that side of the business now too. But it's not as hard to get a book published now as it was 10 years ago, but it sure is hard to get it noticed.
Mm.
It is a very saturated marketplace. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, even just, trying to get a podcast noticed.
Oh,
5 years ago, you compare 5 years ago to now, it's got to have be 10 times as many. It's
oh
just
yeah, there's
it's
like hundreds of thousands of podcasts, and
Yeah.
all of them pretty similar to what you want to do and stuff. Like, yeah, everything's oversaturated. Even music, podcasts, books, movies. Like, it's
40
a
million
very.
books on Amazon right now.
What's
40
that?
million, 40 million books on Amazon right now.
Wow, that's crazy.
And yeah, so you got that. And then in the movies, it's like your only choices for movies are you can make like a $5 to $10 million movie, or you can make a $200 million movie.
Hmm.
Those are the only ones that do well. If you got something kind of in the middle, it's just not finding a home. Like I said, it's a weird time.
It is, and we have so many options. Like back in the day, we had only a few options of what we want to watch, what we want to read. Like, but now with all the different streaming networks, we have a ton of different streaming networks. Like the choices are like overwhelming. It's like I don't know what's good anymore, you know. And I go check out reviews, and a lot of reviews I don't really trust too well unless it's somebody I know, you know. And it's like I don't know what the hell to watch.
Well, I'll give you one. Barry. There, go watch
Oh,
Barry.
I love Barry. Yeah, I've already
Yeah.
finished that season 3. Yep, already watched all that. Barry was fucking great.
They started shooting season 4 this week.
Oh, nice.
Cameras
Cool.
rolled this week on the new one, so they're going back. They
HBO
said,
is great. I love like the HBO originals and stuff. Like it's a bunch of great quality stuff, you know.
yeah, I'm trying to think of what else we're going back to. Oh, we've we've been focusing in this house, my wife and I,
Mhm.
on like late 80s ghost story films. The Changeling, Ghost Story,
Mhm.
Ghost Ship. All the, everything Peter Straub wrote, they put into pictures. A lot of those hold up. A
Oh
lot.
yeah, I agree.
I'm looking for a good ghost story book. I think that's going to be the next thing. Can you recommend me a good ghost story book?
Oh man, not off the top of my head, I've been on a Stephen King kick for like the past couple years
Ah,
because he's got so much stuff, man. It's like I first went through the Dark Tower series, and that took me like 2 years. I was doing audiobook versions.
ah,
So it was a
yeah,
hell of a
there's
journey because I listened to it
a
when I'm at
lot.
work. So yeah, it was so much. But man, that ending, it's like holy shit, you know. So I've been on a kick with him for a while now. With ghost stories, I really don't read too many ghost stories. Like I say, I stick with like Stephen King, Clyde Barker. I just started reading Peter Ferris, who does like crime. I guess you would call them crime thrillers, really dark noir type stuff.
Ah,
I've been sticking with that for right now. And actually, I just got done reading one of the Encyclopocalypse, people there that was deeper than hell from Josh. So that was really killer, but it has nothing to do with. Well, there's some ghosts in deeper than hell, so
it's in it's in my stack. I haven't read it yet, but
so good.
it's sitting there waiting.
It's a quick read too, because it's just like nonstop, like what the fuck? It's like craziness, like the whole time. There's no like break, and you can't put it down. So there is a ghost in that. So I can let me go and recommend Deeper Than Hell. So without
And I've
giving
already
too much,
got it, so that's great. That works
yeah.
great.
And like I say, now I'm starting the whole Conan thing, and I have 35 hours of audio content with that. So
There is a lot. Are you bouncing around, or because the chronologies are really weird in Conan?
I'll tell you exactly what I'm starting on here. I am on it's the Conan the Chimerian Barbarian, the Complete Weird Tales Omnibus. And it's
Okay.
yeah, it's supposed to be, it starts out with like a short biography, then it goes into a little bit about Cole. You get like 4 or 5 chapters on like Cole gets introduced and everything, and then after that it goes into like the very first appearance of Conan and all the way through supposedly.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, my dad got me into the Conan comics when I was a kid because when he was younger, he had a whole shit ton of comics, like a lot of Conan stuff. I think all like GI Joe stuff, but the Conan stuff was always really cool. So
Yeah, that
it's
was
nice
all
to.
Ray
What's that?
Thomas and John Buscema. All the Marvel titles. Is that the ones? What
Yeah,
is
the
that?
Marvel
That's
ones.
all
Yep.
about.
I wish I still had those. They ended up getting pretty wrecked over the years. I didn't take good care of them, but I didn't know when I had them when I was a kid. So, you know,
That's why they're hard to find and expensive now.
right. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping one day we get another Conan movie that's I think worth a crap. Like, the last one that came out with what's that guy's name? Jason Momoa, right? I think that was the last Conan movie.
Yep.
Yeah, it was all right, I guess. I don't know, man. I prefer the Arnolds.
It looked like uh, it looked like a lot of committee decisions.
hmm
that one. They need to hand it off to some loner and leave them alone.
I think Robert Eggers could do it justice.
And you watch the opening of the movie, and there's what, 15, 20 logos of production company. Those are all people that put money in. And that means each of those people are going to be in the editing room going, I don't know, or talking about the dailies. Everybody's got input.
Right.
So that's tough. It's really tough to get a singular vision out the other side of that process, unless you've got a lot of juice.
That was a problem that happened with the Halloween sequel that Rob Zombie did. Like, I enjoyed the first Halloween movie he did, the remake. I thought it was pretty cool. But then the second one came out, and I was like, what the hell is this, man? And he said he had a whole bunch of trouble. People telling him what to do, this, do that, and he kind of lost control of it,
Yeah. It happens.
Yeah.
But that's where I said, you either, if you do make the $200 million, it's always the thing that Henson's had a hand in the Where the Wild Things Are, that Spike Jonze made back when. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, I have. Yes.
It's really, really pretty. And he said he knew his trouble, because that thing bounced from studio to studio to studio. And he wanted to shoot it as if David Attenborough on Green Planet was shooting the Wild Things. He wanted it to look like nature footage when they were rolling around on the beach and fighting with rocks and stuff like that. He didn't want it to look like an action movie. He wanted big wide shots or really close shots and spend a long time with the critters. And the story he was telling was not, a happy fairy tale story. And he said, I've got this art house movie with a special effects blockbuster budget. And that's the tough sell. That's where I was saying before, you can do a $9 million movie or a $200 million movie, because if you were to make a movie with, I don't know, like Blade Runner, you can't spend a little bit of money on it. You got to spend a lot of money on it, and you're probably not going to make it back. The right people will make it anyway.
Right. Yeah.
That's they made 2049 because they, you had to. They made The Arrival because you had to. So we'll see how it turns out. But right now, it seems to me there's a big split creatively.
Yeah, I just seen something recently. I'm not going to say anything because a lot of people like it. I do not like it. It just came out very recently as we're speaking now. Not when this podcast comes out, but as of right now, something big came out and stuff. And I must be like the only hater of this movie so far. So, and I think, there's some weird things going on there with production stuff and everything. So, yeah, kind of rough.
Well, just making it though. When David Cronenberg was up for his first Oscar, I think it was for History of Violence, somebody came to him and said, so what do you think? You're finally up for an Oscar after all these movies you made. And he just takes a breath and he goes, I think everybody who completes a movie should get an award. People don't know how hard it is just to start the process and find the money and do the production and come out the other side with a finished thing. Just to do it, just to get it, that it didn't die in the middle.
I totally agree with that.
So even Jaws 4 should have got an Oscar. Anything.
Jaws 4 is actually kind of fun going back and watching it now. So I recommend that during a summertime horror watching, is going through all the Jaws movies, start with number 1, which is the best, of course, and this going down that weird rabbit hole with the rest of them, They get crazy.
I haven't seen Jaws 4 since it came out. I should give it another shot.
Yeah, they were all streaming on Peacock. So if you got Peacock, they should still be on there, hopefully.
I will add it to the list.
Nice. What kind of projects do you have coming out in the future that we can look forward to?
Well, as it says in my bio, the contracts say I can't talk about them, a lot of them, but I'll just say I have a tabletop game I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you what. And I have a web series I'm working on, and I can't tell you what. And then I've got my next two things with Encyclopocalypse, and I think I can talk about those.
Okay.
I've come up with it's all fiction. It's all kind of meta world, but there's a Poverty Row studio making movies in the 70s called World Cinema Group. And I've invented the studio and the guys who ran it and the directors they usually worked with and the writers they usually worked with. And it's all fiction. It's all made up. Every film they did is a lost film because the guy who ran the studio, Harold J. Kerr, did not believe in television.
Mm-hmm.
He thought TV was a ripoff, so he never sold his movies to TV. So they've all just kind of faded and crusted away. But we do have the stories that all the movies were based on. So
Right.
One by one, we're putting out the sort of semi-novelizations of all of the different pictures that World Cinema Group put out between 1957 and 1974.
Cool.
And the funnest part, funnest, is that a word? Yeah, the funnest part. The story itself is fun. You make up the story for Drag Strip Zombie Massacre or Bog Fiends or, Murder Garden or whatever the movie is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also doing a couple of pages of like Internet Movie Database trivia
Ooh.
around the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was this actor was this, and for this effect they did that. And I've got other friends that are drawing, found storyboard images or maybe some test shots with props or so. So it does look like we've archived what we could find
Mm-hmm.
from this old studio. So hopefully it'll read like a bunch of people, stitching together a mystery about these old pictures plus the story. But it's mostly about the story. So the first of those is out later this year.
Nice. Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely going to keep a lookout for all that and stuff. And also your top secret projects that you can't talk about. That'd be, yeah. 'Cause I follow you on social media too, I believe. So
yeah, when I get hired to do stuff, until the person who hired me says the thing, I don't say the thing.
oh yeah, totally understand that.
That's I mean, I've probably sat in a room with other people and talked about the thing with the publisher there,
Mm-hmm.
the producer there. That's one thing. But yeah, when the person who's writing the check has not mentioned it on their social medias or whatever, I'm not going to say a word about it.
Totally understand. Mum's the word on that one. If anybody wants to follow you on your social media pages, where can they find you at?
I don't have them, and it is
Oh,
so
I thought you
freeing.
did. Oh,
It's
yep.
so freeing. No, I was I got to put it. I always point people to where they can get the things.
Okay.
So if we're talking about Manborg, they should go to the Encyclopocalypse pages.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a great job over there. They've got a very good Twitter page and even their home web page. And if they want to find out about me, I'm there. I've got a bio and link to all my books and stuff like that are right there.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I do not have a social media presence.
Well, that's a good thing. It's a good thing and bad thing. I just have a social media presence just to do promotion and stuff like that. But it is definitely a freeing thing that you don't have one. So yeah, it's pretty good.
It's all I can do to finish the stories. If I had to also update
Oh yeah,
all my socials, nothing would ever get done but that.
that's a job in its own,
And I don't think it's good for me. I mean, I'm old enough to remember rec arts, chat areas or MUDs and multiplayer underworld dungeon and in the early days of the internet when everything was in chat rooms and in bulletin boards. It was bad. It ate a lot of my time.
Right.
I would think that if I got back onto the socials now, it would be the last thing I did.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brett, it's been a great talking with you, man. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Fun for me too. Now, I have to ask, is
Mhm.
your name Legion?
My last name is Legion, but
So your name is Legion. That is so
yeah, but
awesome.
wait, yeah, not by it's not by it's not my given name. It's the name I gave my last name I gave myself many years ago, and it kind of started with doing band stuff. So I just kind of kept it. It leaves a mystery, and it sounds better than my real last name, which I don't give out.
Well, you can give mine, and you can give the titles of the books. You can give everything you want.
Excellent. I have links to all this too down in the show notes for this episode, so I
Ruby.
make sure it gets out there for you.
All right. Is there anything else you need?
No, this is great, and I hope you have a killer rest of your weekend.
I will do my very best. I hope you do the same.
All right, thanks, and take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.